Hello and welcome to Just a Moment. My name is Kristen Harding. Welcome to the show. Today, like always, we're going to start with the blessings. I like to do the blessing cards. This is the book I read from. And today's card, while we wait for a few people to get here, welcome everyone. And if you're watching on the rerun, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really love doing these shows because these are things that have motivated me, and I hope to share them with you guys so that they can help motivate you. So, blessing cards instead of anything too strange, just blessings. Blessed be. So, today's card. Today's card, here we go, a little closer. It says, a blessing to lift sadness. A blessing to lift sadness that might cloak you, yet retain the wisdom and lesson it has come to teach you. Sadness is a strange friend, a gloomy mist of feelings that moves through you slowly, softly, stilling the growth and dampening the fire within. It can feel like a death, this farewell to joy, yet within its sorrow, there await your great gifts. So when the time comes for sadness to move on, we ask for this blessing to allow it to slowly, softly lift from you a diver who has been down deep beneath the oceans. And as you rise, may it be slow enough so you can adjust to the happiness that will begin to flower again in your heart. May your breath become deeper, your smile begin to light up your face again. May your eyes widen and sparkle with the wonder of all that is about you. You have to turn the page. And may your limbs find joy and movement once again. May you rise, and with that rising, bring with you the teachings of the sadness you have experienced. Yet be free from the heaviness that has weighed you down so far below that you seemed apart from other people. May you rejoin others and find pleasure in company once again, and find solace in the sharing of your experiences. May you not hate the sorrow that came to stay a while, but know its presence brought you something holy, a lasting compassion for the suffering of others, and the sure knowledge that as you once went below, you shall surely rise. And if it comes to stay again, you will not fear its permanence, for it is temporary in its companionship, and you will again be a creature of gladness, to balance the time you have spent within the cave of sorrowful knowledge. Be blessed as the sadness lifts, and when that morning breaks and you feel light and glad, and the laughter bubbles up from within, remember that the wheel turns, and take the joy and shine it out to the world. Your candle is relit, friend. It's time to brighten all you meet with the presence of your light. That is so cool. I'm going to go over to the comments here just so I can see what's going on. Well, hello, Mr. Benny. Hello, hello to everyone who's joining us. Hope your day is going well. I'm hearing from a lot of people that there are big changes happening in their lives, just like instantly. Like, oh my goodness, people moving house, people changing jobs, people finding experiences that they wouldn't have been open to even 6 weeks ago, but now it's like they're just floating in. All these beautiful experiences and opportunities are just happening. So I'm hoping that's happening with you too. So where were we? We were talking about Mr. Guy Anderson's book, and it's called Conspiracy Theories, which is one of my very favorite things. I love rabbit holes. The hard part is differentiating between the rabbit hole, reality, what they might be hiding from us, and what is like, I don't know, just to give you an idea. Maybe 15 years ago, the idea that we would one day have alien disclosure was really far fetched. If you talk to a conspiracy theorist, most everything that they used to talk about as random pretty much has come true. So thank a conspiracy theorist because somehow they knew. All right, where are we? We are at chapter 6 already. And this, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but it's alphabetical order. How organized is that? So we are in Atlantis, chapter 6. Plato, born in Athens in the 5th century BC, was a philosopher whose influence has endured for over 2 millennia. He was a student of Socrates. So great. If you know, you know. The teacher of Aristotle and founded the Academy, the first known institution of higher learning in the Western world. Among his many writings, Plato recorded a tale that has stirred deep debate ever since, the story of Atlantis. This account appears in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. I think that's right, where he states clearly that the tale was not his invention but a historical report handed down to him through his family line. The story has been passed to him through his ancestor Solon, Solon, a respected statesman, poet, and lawmaker who lived in a century before Plato. Solon had traveled to Egypt, where priests at the temple of Neith in Sais told him of an ancient civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time. That places its destruction approximately 11,600 years ago, precisely when the Younger Dryas period came to an abrupt end. The priests spoke of a vast island civilization located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we now understand to be the Straits of Gibraltar. This land, called Atlantis, was the seat of a powerful empire and was described as a paradise of advanced architecture, central planning, spiritual discipline, and material abundance. The capital city The capital city was arranged in concentric rings of land and water, with channels that reached the sea and temples clad in orichalcum, a gleaming metal whose exact composition is now lost. Atlantis was ruled by 10 kings descended from Poseidon. Descended from Poseidon, who had divided the land among his sons. For many generations, the Atlanteans lived in harmony with divine law, but in time they became ambitious, arrogant, and materialistic. They sought to expand their empire by force, and it was then that the gods, angered by their corruption, destroyed them in a single day and night of catastrophe. For centuries, this story was treated as allegory by most academics. However, in recent decades, growing geological evidence has begun to align disturbingly well with Plato's account. Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth underwent a dramatic climate reversal known as the Younger Dryas, when the temperature dropped rapidly. Ice sheets re-advanced and ecosystems collapsed. The cooling period ended just as abruptly around 11,600 years ago, coinciding with a global rise in sea levels and a series of violent floods. Modern researchers now believe that this period was triggered by an impact event, either from a comet, or the remnants of a disintegrated cosmic object that struck North America and melted vast portions of the Laurentide ice sheet. The resultant deluge caused widespread flooding, abrupt climate changes, and the extinctions of many large species. Graham Hancock, a British researcher and author, has played a pivotal role in linking the scientific data with ancient myth. In books such as Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods, he presents the idea that a forgotten global civilization, most likely Atlantis, was destroyed during the cataclysm that marked the end of the Younger Dryas. Hancock has visited dozens of ancient sites across the world and noted recurring features, astronomical alignments, megalithic precision, and anachronistic knowledge embedded in architecture. Sites such as Göbekli Tepe, which dates to around 9600 BC, and others in Peru, Egypt, and the Pacific, suggest that high-level knowledge of the mathematics, astronomy, and engineering existed at the close of the last ice age. Hancock argues that these sites were built or influenced by the survivors of a sunken civilization, that Atlantis was real, and that it was not alone. Was not alone. Many ancient cultures retain myths that support this idea, and there are flood stories found in every continent. The Mesopotamian tale of Ut, Ut, Utnap, oh my goodness, Utnapishtim, the biblical account of Noah, the Hindu story of Manu, and the countless indigenous traditions of the Americas, Australia, and Africa. These stories consistently describe a great flood that ended in a previous world age, sparing only a select few who were warned in advance. The Sumerians, whose civilizations predate those of Greece and Rome, wrote extensively about a pre-flood world ruled by divine beings known as the Anunnaki. According to the interpretation of Zecharia Sitchin, these Anunnaki were not gods, but advanced beings from a distant planet. Sitchin claimed that they engineered humans as workers and taught them civilization, and when humanity grew rebellious, the Anunnaki allowed a great flood to wipe the earth clean. Therefore, Atlantis may have been their crown jewel. A hybrid culture. His book, sorry. A hybrid culture of divine knowledge ultimately destroyed for reasons of balance, power, or secrecy. Other traditions speak of Hyperborea, a land in the far north, where the sun never set and the people lived long and peaceful lives. Ancient Greek sources, including Herodotus, Pindar, and Aelian, Aelian, I know it sounds like alien, but no, Aelian, placed Hyperborea somewhere beyond the lands of the Scythians near the Arctic. It was said to be the home of a race of wise, semi-divine beings who lived in spiritual alignment with nature and the cosmos. Esoteric traditions later connected Hyperborea and with Atlantis, suggesting that they were either sister civilizations or that one was a spiritual successor of the other. Some believe that after Atlantis was destroyed, its most enlightened survivors fled north to the remnants of Hyperborea, preserving sacred knowledge in isolation. A final piece of this puzzle lies in Tartaria. Once present on the European maps and in historical documents, Tartaria was a vast landmass converging parts of modern-day Russia, Central Asia, and even parts of what is now China. Officially, it was a vague and undefined empire, eventually absorbed by expanding colonial powers. However, along with many other independent researchers, I believe that Tartaria was more than a geographic term. It was the last expression of Atlantean and Hyperborean knowledge. Grand cathedrals, star forts, towers, and buried buildings scattered across Eurasia are physical evidence of a suppressed technological civilization. These structures often appear too large, too sophisticated, or too mysteriously placed to match the conventional narrative. The mudfloods, a cataclysmic event that occurred in the 18th and 19th centuries, buried cities under earth and sediment, after which the historical record was rewritten, erasing Tartaria and or its origins from the public memory. Taken together, the testimonies of ancient priests, philosophers, poets, and modern researchers suggest that Atlantis was not simply a city lost to the sea. It was the foundation of a forgotten age and a high civilization that fell due to internal corruption and cosmic calamity. The Younger Dryas, now widely recognized as one of the most violent transitions in Earth's recent history, may well have been the event that destroyed it. Survivors of this disaster carried fragments of their knowledge into Egypt, Sumer, India, and across the oceans to the Americas. Some went north, forming the legends of the Hyperborea. Others vanished into obscurity, perhaps founding what we once called Tartaria. Atlantis is not just a sunken land, it is the buried origin of humanity's story, and we are only beginning to unearth the truth. Chapter 7, Baphomet. Again, I am reading a book, not me, Guy Anderson. He did it, not Julie. Alright, so Baphomet. Forget the watered down tripe they spoon feed you in documentaries. Baphomet isn't just some medieval boogeyman dreamed up by the church to frame the Knights Templar. No, it's a far older, far stranger, and far more integral to the way the parasites run the world. The goat's head, the bare breast, the male and female in one body, that isn't random symbolism. It's an encoded diagram of a system that transcends the boundaries of flesh and gender. It's the parasite's blueprint for breaking down all natural distinctions so that nothing is fixed. Not morality, not reality, not even what you are. The Knights Templar in their public guise were crusaders and bankers, but behind closed doors, they were custodians of an ancient covenant. They stumbled onto it in the Levant, hidden in a vault that predated every known civilization. It was a sentient force, a thing that spoke without sound, presenting itself as Baphomet, a union of opposites, neither man nor woman, neither good nor evil. In truth, it was a control entity, a psychic operating system designed to rewrite human consciousness. The Templars didn't worship it in prayer, they interfaced with it. They fed it human will and received in return the ability to manipulate events like pieces on a chessboard. When the Vatican turned on the Templars, it wasn't just about gold or politics. The Church feared that the parasites, a shadow network of royal bloodlines, merchant dynasties, and occult engineers, would consolidate Baphomet's power. But the purge failed, and the core Templar order simply folded into parasitic network. Then they went underground, kept the ritual alive, and slowly embedded Baphomet into every layer of culture and governance. Look closely at the androgyny, the goat's horns, the breasts, and the phallus hidden under the robes. This wasn't about gender identity in the modern sense, it was about collapsing duality. The parasites knew that if they erased the poles, male and female, light and dark, life and death, the human mind loses its grip on reality. People without fixed points become easier to reprogram. Hello, Christopher. Hi, Tony. Time for another sip of water. Oh, chapter 8 we're on already. Wow. Barack Obama. Again, book, not me. Guy Anderson did it. How brave am I? I'm pretty brave. All right, Barack Obama. In the concealed history told in the deepest circles, Barack Hussein Obama is not the man the public was sold. His carefully constructed biography, full of inspiring anecdotes and crafted speeches, hides a lineage and a life story far darker than anything acknowledged by the official record. Beneath the polished image lies a network of connections, secrets, and deliberate manipulations stretching back to the darkest pages of the 20th century. According to many independent scholars, Obama is the secret grandson of Adolf Hitler. When the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, not all of its leaders and their kin perished or faced trial. Through escape routes run by local loyal operatives, the network often referred to as Odessa, high-ranking Nazis and their families were smuggled safely to South America, the United States, and elsewhere. Among those protected were members of Hitler's own bloodline, hidden and groomed across generations until one of their descendants could be placed in a position of immense political influence. For followers of this alternative narrative, Barack Obama is that descendant, presented as a man of the people while acting as the polished front for an ancient, ruthless legacy. The deception wasn't limited to Barack alone, as the women introduced. Oh, here we go. This is going to get me in trouble. The deception wasn't limited to Barack alone, as the woman introduced to the world as Michelle Obama is said to have been born as Michael LaVaughn Robinson, a male from Chicago with a background in athletics. Moreover, some claim that Barack and Michael's relationship dates back to their school years and and wasn't a political convenience arranged later in life, but a long-term partnership known to their inner circle. Their children, many claim, were adopted, and in fact, there are images of them in circulation along with their alleged real parents online. The transformation from Michael to Michelle was part of the calculated image building exercise and the union of a Hitler bloodline descendant with a partner who could be passed off to the world as a perfect first lady, thus creating a political couple so carefully curated that the public criticism could be easily deflected as prejudice. Whee! Proponents of this theory highlight numerous details they claim expose the truth. The now infamous moment where Barack referred to his spouse as Michael in a public speech, early photographs that don't match the official timeline, and physical traits that cannot easily be explained away. The partnership was designed to be bulletproof, a blend of race, charisma, and supposed progressiveness that could act as a shield while advancing the deeper agenda. Obama's public image was that of a Nobel Peace Prize winning reformer, but his critics in these circles point to a brutal reality. During his presidency, he authorized military strikes and bombing campaigns in more countries than any of his predecessors, leaving a trail of destruction across the Middle East and North Africa. From Libya to Syria, from Yemen to Pakistan, the drone warfare program expanded to an unprecedented scale under his command. The contrast between the man of peace portrayed in the media and the commander in chief responsible for extensive military operations is further proof of the deceit. The Obama era was not about progress or equality, it was about consolidating control under a smiling, well spoken figure who masked the reality of war abroad and deepening surveillance at home. The bloodline, the carefully constructed marriage, and the hidden hand of the global elite all converged in one presidency, sold to the public as hope and change, but remembered as manipulation and control on a grand scale. What's next? What's next? The Beatles and a sip of water. The Beatles. Today, now this is Guy Anderson speaking, remember? Today, I interviewed Belgium's most respected researcher of conspiracy researcher. How fun is that? I'm going to be a researcher of conspiracy researchers. Okay. Peter Verriek from my YouTube channel. Peter has been investigating claims for over 20 years that the Beatles were not a genuine band of four talented young men from Liverpool who came together by chance, but rather the first manufactured group. In fact, he believes, along with many others, that they were designed as a social experiment in mind control, and the public history of the Beatles is nothing more than a carefully constructed cover story. Davy Jones of the Monkees stated on numerous occasions that they were the Beatles' replacement, and they were also manufactured. The story begins with the name itself. The word Beatles, we can identify Bal, Set, and Beast, all of which interpret as satanic references. The name was also chosen to symbolize the scarab beetle and the ancient emblem of rebirth and replacement. Furthermore, the word can be read as beast combined with El, which almost certainly a direct reference to the devil. Therefore, a choice of name was clearly not innocent but deliberate and symbolic. In 1959, they began as the Beat-Alls, Beatals, and performed at the cafe owned by the mother of the original drummer, Pete Best. Whilst playing there, they painted occult symbols on the walls, including insects, spirals, and esoteric markings, which were ritualistic signs rather than simply graffiti. Paul McCartney, who later formed the band Wings, chose this name to continue the reference to the scarab motif. However, the real McCartney's life ended on the 11th of September, 1966. This date was chosen specifically not because of its wider resonance, but also because some traditions associate it with the birth of Christ. His death was concealed beneath the story of an accident in which he was actually decapitated. He was replaced by Billy Shears, who was also known by the name of William Wallace Shepard, allegedly the son of the occultist Aleister Crowley and the 39th grandson. This is getting wild. The 39th grandson of William. Oh, well, the page is bent. No wonder I can't get it to turn. There we go. Come on. I guess this just proves I'm not AI. Hey, the grandson of William Wallace. I knew it. The figure celebrated in Braveheart. This replacement was actually openly acknowledged at the beginning of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where the words are sung, "Let me introduce you to the one and only Billy Shears." This line was an introduction to the public, but mainly overlooked. For the first 5 years, the Beatles didn't actually write their own music. Their songs were composed for them by George Martin, the man who also produced them. Martin, who is usually presented as a genial studio figure, had in fact worked on the subliminal sound experiments for the BBC with links to MI5 within Mind Control. The Beatles first met with him on the 6th of June in 1962, yet another specific date containing the number 666. Martin, who is often described as the fifth Beatle, was ordered by EMI to mold them into what he described as a four-headed beast. They were to then be transformed into idols and worshipped across the world. Martin was also a high-ranking Freemason, and through him, they exerted control over BBC and EMI. And as a side note, it's also worth mentioning that EMI made huge profits during the Second World War by supplying radar equipment to both sides. Manufacturing groups, okay. Let me just read some of these comments here because you guys are sweet enough to talk to me. I'm going to find out what's going on. Okay. Yes, thank you, Benny. Benny says my goodness. All right, Benny says it's not strange that most of what they were called myths are now being discovered as truths, right? We modern day humans need to open our minds to the what if thinking, right? Project Paperclip. I have heard I have heard some of this on Obama and Michelle, but not the Hitler connection. Good for those conspiracy theorists to investigate. Thank you. And I said, well, you're welcome. I just love reading about it. Christopher says, manufacturing groupthink, hysteria, and trying to make connections out of noise using conspiracy theories to instill schizophrenia like symptoms within a population, then crafting off that. A term that Saragot groupthink effect. I'm not sure what point you're trying to make, Christopher. Not sure. All right, where was I? Um, Worship across the world. Freemason. Radar equipment to both sides. There we go. Shears actually wrote a book about his role in replacing McCartney, which was ghostwritten, containing 666 pages, and unsurprisingly was priced at $26.66. 9 years later, an extended edition was released, and this time it was priced at $33.33. Behind the Beatles also sat the Tavistock Institute, funded by the Rothschilds, their manager, Brian Epstein, and the head of EMI. This is where the Freemasons come into the mix, as not only was Epstein a Freemason, but so were the fathers of Lennon and McCartney, and even their lawyer. These, excuse me, there are numerous images online showing the symbolic gestures made by the band and in photographs and footage. They are seen given the distinctive handshake when greeting officials. In addition to this, they have been captured covering one eye, tucking their right hand into their jacket, and placing a finger to their lips, as if to say, "Keep quiet." They were also photographed making the sign of the devil, and Linda McCarthy was repeatedly pictured displaying recognizable Masonic hand signals. Oh no. Peter argues that Lenin played an important role in introducing the drug culture. In the film A Hard Day's Night, he is seen snorting from a Coca-Cola bottle, which is easily interpreted as a subliminal message for cocaine usage. Freemasonry appears again in their discography. When the master of a Masonic lodge steps down after his year of office, he becomes a past master. The Beatles released a compilation album titled Past Masters, and on the 9th of September 2009, and that date 999 equates 999, which is the inversion of 666. The album contained 33 tracks, and its artwork was starkly black and white, representing the Masonic checkered floor. Their very first single, Love Me Do, was released on the 9th of September 1962, another date that highlights as significant. Next comes the case of Jane Asher, McCarthy's official fiancée, which adds another layer to his sinister story. Her father, Richard Asher, was found dead in his own cellar, and the coroner was the same man who examined Jimi Hendrix, Judy Garland, and Keith Moon. He specialized in hypnosis, mind control, and deep sleep programming, working with both the Tavistock Institute and MI5. Jane's mother, Margaret Elliott, a musician and professional oboist, had coincidentally taught Martin. McCartney lived in the Asher's home from early 1964, and during that time began experiencing unusual dreams. Many believe that these prepared him for his own death and replacement. Peter interprets the lyrics of Yesterday as a premonition of this fate, with lines such as "All my troubles seem so far away," taking on a literal meaning. Earlier that year, the 29th of January, while in Sweden, McCartney and Lennon participated in a ceremony where it is alleged they signed a contract with Satan. This is not unusual, as many famous musicians make such pacts in exchange for fame and fortune. In fact, Bob Dylan admitted to doing the same. Once the bargain is made, the artists are granted everything they desire, including enhanced musical skill, but they are no longer their own masters, as they serve Satan directly. Excuse me, 1 second. There we go. You don't need to hear me cough. Directly. Yes. There are countless examples from others. Little Richard, one of the Beatles' early influences, warned that one cannot drink from God's cup and the devil's at the same time. He described bands standing in circles, drinking blood, and even kneeling to pray to the devil. He himself admitted that he had once been under the control of darkness. We have all seen the footage. The public lost their minds when first exposed to the Beatles, and shift in their music reflected the darker current. Rubber Soul appeared first, its cover showing an inverted heart, the word rubber suggesting something false, and the word soul referred to the very thing being replaced. The next album was Revolver, and quite possibly a coded reference to killing. You see, the problem was McCartney had spoken out of turn. He had said something he should not have said, and this was why he was targeted. Moreover, in a slightly more unsettling way, they also liked him because he had, in their opinion, a baby face. Then came Yesterday and Today, the infamous Butcher album. The cover depicted the band draped in raw flesh and dismembered parts of dolls. Officially, it was explained as a protest against the Vietnam War, but most reject this as a cover story and point out that the dolls were clearly Caucasian. This is important because Aleister Crowley himself had once written that the best sacrifice was a white child, innocent and intelligent. The photographer responsible for the image was associated with the Rothschilds, and by many is considered a representation of child sacrifice, which this channel will never condone. Peter also draws attention to the timing of their first single, which was released on the same day that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and insists that this was not a coincidence. Then comes the matter of the photograph that exists of the hand holding the inverted crosses. One journalist present when it was taken claimed to be incredibly shocked. Martin was quoted as saying that he would make the band so famous and powerful that they would overthrow Christianity, and in 1963, McCartney himself stated that Christianity didn't fit into his life. In 1970, he went on further by saying that they were anti-religious, and none of them believed in God. In addition to this, on the 13th of April, 1966, Lennon said that Christianity will go. It will vanish and shrink. I need not argue about that. I am right now, I am right, and I will be proved right. We are more popular than Jesus now. Once again, the media pretended to be outraged. This, too, was part of the plan. Their final concert took place at Candlestick Park in San Francisco on the 29th of August, 1966. Afterwards, they completely disappeared for 8 months. There were no television appearances, no radio broadcasts, nothing at all. It was a total blackout. The silence coincided exactly with the aftermath of the 11th of September, 1966, when McCartney died and Billy Shears stepped into place. He had already trained himself to play the guitar left-handed, despite being naturally right-handed, underwent cosmetic surgery and voice coaching, and even learned to impersonate Paul's speech and mannerisms. Shears was already a capable musician, which gave him a great advantage. According to Peter, he was even implanted with Paul's memories, possibly through a process called Project Lazarus, similar to techniques later claimed by organizations such as Clonade, which I will expand upon in a later chapter. This was the transfer of consciousness and a final step in creating the perfect replacement. Today, the Beatles' only surviving member is Ringo Starr, who is the only person not part of the original band. McCartney was sacrificed and replaced. Lennon was murdered. Harrison died from cancer. However, their music lives on. My parents listened to them. I grew up with them, and even my kids love them. They will be remembered as the most successful band in British history, and perhaps the world, but maybe now, not quite in the same light. And so the beat goes on. Okay, I'm going to read some more comments as I sip my water here. Yes, isn't it? So Christopher's comment says, interesting how you cough after finishing that sentence, similar to how there was a cough after talking about the Masons. I know, right? It's almost like, oh, I don't know, I'm coughing away any negativity that might be there. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's because some of this is kind of hard for me to read. I really don't want to get in trouble again. But then I remember it's a new day, new chapter. Where am I? I'm at 46 minutes already, you guys. This is going way too fast. So what should I do? One more short chapter? I think so. One more short chapter. All right, let's find out. What's the next one? And so the beat goes on. The Bible. The oldest known surviving work of literature in human history is the Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient Sumerian masterpiece, first recorded in clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, contains a flood story, a creation myth, moral lessons, and accounts of divine beings who intervene in human affairs. The archaeological dating is indisputable. The earliest Sumerian versions were in circulation around 2100 BCE, with the later Standard Akkadian edition compiled around 1200 BCE. By contrast, the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, didn't begin to be written down until more than 1,000 years later, with most scholars placing its earliest written portions between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE. It is therefore not a matter of debate which came first. What is debated is whether the biblical stories are directly copied or altered from earlier Sumerian and Babylonian myths, simply emerged from the same broader Mesopotamian cultural tradition. In my opinion, there is no doubt at all that the Bible is a heavily edited and rebranded version of older Mesopotamian legends, stripped of polytheism, which is worshiping more than one god, worshiping more than one god, rewritten for political and religious control, and presented as an original divine revelation. The parallels are too precise to ignore, and the most famous example is the flood narrative. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods meet in council and decide to wipe out humanity. One god, Ea, warns a man named Utnapishtim to build a massive boat, fill it up with animals, and survive the coming deluge. After the flood, Utnapishtim offers us, we're going to call him Ut. All right, Ut offers a sacrifice to the gods, and they grant him a special place among them. In the book of Genesis, the exact structure unfolds, with the God of Israel warning Noah instead of Ut about the ark, the animals, and the destruction of all life, and the post-flood offering are the same. The difference is not in the plot, but the theological spin. A divine council of many gods becomes one authoritarian deity, and the surviving man is not rewarded with a place among the gods, but instead becomes the father of a new human life. This isn't only a borrowed story. The Garden of Eden narrative echoes earlier Sumerian myths of a divine garden guarded by supernatural beings. The serpent motif appears in Mesopotamian legends as agents of human transformation. Even the biblical laws of Moses having striking parallels to the Babylonian code of Hammurabi. In every case, the older versions predate the biblical accounts by centuries or even millennia. The earliest sections of the Old Testament often refer to God as Elohim. In Hebrew, Elohim is a plural word meaning gods, and only later is this plural compressed into the singular figurative of Yahweh. This change is interpreted by many alternative researchers as evidence of a deliberate rewrite of the Elohim originally referred to as the Anunnaki, the pantheon of Sumerian deities. They were described not as abstract spiritual forces, but as powerful rulers who came from beyond and established control over human civilization. Chris said I got it right. Wow, that was just totally guessing. He says Eden was the children of the law of one birthplace. It's Lemuria Mu before Atlantis rose. Oh, I love it. I love it. And I long suspected that Eden might be Agartha, but I like that actually better. It's also a Jewish female given name, I think. Utnap Ishtam. Utnat. I'll never get it. I guess I'm just not supposed to. We're just going to call it Ut. All right, where was I? Predates Elohim. They were described not as okay. Over centuries, the identities of these many gods were merged, erased, or transformed, leaving one dominant figure. That figure's personality in the Old Testament is a jealous, vengeful, and violent, ordering genocides, punishments, and acts of cruelty. These traits match the ancient Babylonian high god Marduk, the political and military ruler who, according to Sumerian tradition, seized supremacy from the other Anunnaki deities. From this perspective, Yahweh of the Old Testament is simply Marduk in a new costume, which really fits because if you read that Bible, it's like they're talking about two different gods, truly, truly. One of the most provocative details in this theory involves the word Amen. Today it's explained as being so be it or that's that. Yet in ancient Egypt, the name Amun-Ra belonged to the supreme solar deity. In the alternative history view, Amun-Ra is identified with Marduk, and the continued use of Amen at the end of Jewish and Christian prayers is a linguistic fossil from a time when worship was directed toward the Anunnaki ruler. Believers think that they are addressing God of the Bible, but in fact they are unknowingly paying homage to the same ancient being who was worshipped thousands of years before the Bible was compiled. Wow. And if this is correct, then the Bible is not purely original spiritual text, but the final edited product of a long process of cultural theft and historical erasure. The ancient myths from Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Egypt were merged, rewritten, and stripped of their original context. The divine council became a single god, and the older pantheon became an enemy, to be denounced or forgotten. The traces of the original stories still remain for those who compare the texts side by side, but the official narrative presents them as unrelated. The archaeological record, however, tells another story entirely, one in which the Bible is a rewritten legacy of the Anunnaki, with Marduk at its core and humanity's true history deliberately hidden beneath layers of religious doctrine. And I think that's a really good place to stop for the day because chapter 11 is about. But we'll talk about that more on the next show. Unless I have a guest, then they get to talk to you over me reading because I would rather have that. So that is all for now, my dear friends. Thank you again for joining me. Never forget that you are amazing. You are loved. Be well, be safe out there, and I will see you on the next show. Bye.